today we'll talk about German and Italian unification. Right? There's supposed to be a title slide here, but I missed that. Point being is that in the past few lectures, we've seen nationalism and nation building in places really outside of Europe. Right? We have the North American examples. We have Latin American examples. Japan's been going through a little bit of it too in that lecture we had on Japan. Right? So a lot of these non-European places are experiencing nationalism or going through early stages of nationalism and building their nations as a result. We don't get to see that in Europe that much, though, because, hey, look, there's already all these established empires, all of these established powers there. Britain, France, Austria-Hungary, Prussia is coming up, right? Germany is there. And a lot of these just older, smaller kingdoms sprinkled throughout. Very few really had a need to nationalize or build a nation because they've already got established identities, established political institutions. They're all there already. But as we'll see, Europe itself, the European mainland, is not immune to this wave of nationalism. And we'll start with Italy. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention this in the other classes, but anyone notice these are like the colors on a pizza? And you've got dough, you've got cheese, some greens, some sauce. I didn't choose these colors. Anyway, Italy. We can again thank Napoleon for a lot of stuff that's going on in this long 19th century. One guy causing all this drama. But hey, during the Napoleonic era, this idea of nationalism and liberalizing Europe really was spread with his armies and with the institutions that were installed once they were there, once they took over. And a lot of Italians really got to experience what that might be like. When Napoleon was defeated and the old order was restored, a lot of those Italians clamored for that same kind of system to stick around. And hence you have revolutionaries like Giuseppe Garibaldi. We'll see him again in a few more years, a few decades really, right? But they're clamoring for change, to go back to that liberal system, a little more liberal system, right? Or at least anti-conservative. Those revolutions in 1848 that we talked about a couple weeks ago, those same students really came from Venetia and Lombardy. If you look at the map in your textbook, I think it's chapter 18, right? Those revolutions of 1848, a lot of those revolution icons or markers are in that region, right around here. But that's part of Austria at the time. And those students wanted reforms or wanted to become a little less saddled by Austrian rule. Didn't work out. Oh well. You can't talk about Italian unification without talking about this neckbeard right here. Camillo di Cavour. Or really Count Camillo Benso? Yeah, Benso di Cavour. I always call him Benson because that's the name of one of my old captains. But Benso di Cavour. For brevity's sake and for the all intents and purposes, we'll just call him Cavour. Right, that's what he's commonly known by now. But he is the Prime Minister of Piedmont, Sardinia. Piedmont, Sardinia being this region right here, top left of the Italian peninsula. Probably the most powerful, the most advanced of the Italian states at the time. Right? Ruled by King Victor Emmanuel II. Cavour is a modernizer. He's a forward-thinking prime minister. And he understands that one of the best projects for the Piedmont Sardinians is to unify all of the Italian states under their leadership. If anyone's going to do it, it'll be them. Right? In order to effect that, he works out a secret deal, with Napoleon III of France, where it's a defensive pact. It's a secret defensive pact, such that if Austria attacks first, then France will come in to save the day. The trade here is that France is offering, France is offering Piedmont, Sardinia, Lombardy, and Venetia in exchange for the cities of Nice and Savoy, or Nice and Savoy, right? Small price to pay for two big regions, two very productive regions in Italy, really just uniting all of northern Italy. They take it. Cavour provokes the Austrians to attack by mobilizing the military, conducting military drills along the border with Austria, and then provoking Austria to attack first. France comes in to save the day, and sure enough, that territorial exchange happens. As soon as the victory spread, or the word of the victory spreads, other revolutionary governments for all those other Italian states decide to sign on and join Piedmont, Sardinia. And so you really have a lot of these northern states all tied up under the flag, under Piedmont, Sardinia. We'll get to the bottom half in just a second, but nonetheless, the top half is more or less accounted for in just that one war. Fast forward to the bottom half, 1860, Giuseppe Garibaldi, that revolutionary from a few decades earlier, leads 1,000 soldiers clad in red, because that's his thing, the Il Mille, I think that's the Italian for 1,000. Right? They join rebellions already in progress in Naples and Sicily. Those governments are already fragile as they are. And so it doesn't take much for Garibaldi to succeed and push those revolutionaries to victory. All those conquered territories, all those conquered cities and towns, he just casually turns it over. No, not casually. He just turns it over to Victor Emmanuel II. And so now you see that the bottom half, the southern half of the country, right, led by a common leader, a popular leader, that grassroots organization, links up with a diplomatically and politically formed top-down organization in the north. Cavour leads the unification in the north. Garibaldi leads the unification in the south. Right? Two different approaches, but they all have the same goal: unify all of Italy. It's a good deal. It's a good deal. 1861, you've got the Kingdom of Italy done. And then 9 years later, Rome and the Papal States surrounding it sign on to be part of Italy too. So yeah, yay Italy. Good job. Now you can make cars. They make good cars. Anyway, some key takeaways here is that this is realpolitik in effect. Question number one, right? Realpolitik, don't care about ideology. Just give me results. Give me results. Based on what's going on in the real world. Look at the real world factors. Don't consider ideology. Don't think about political slant, political bent, the party. Just get stuff done. Work towards the goal. Right? But it's not the first time. This isn't the first time it's happened. This is just one of the clearest displays of it, especially in the modern world, right? In the 19th century European theater. If you guys recall George Washington's farewell address, he implores his fellow Americans to abandon your state ideas or your state identities. You're not a Californian. Right? You're not from Delaware. You're not just a guy from Delaware. You're not just a Virginian or Floridian, whatever. You're an American. Your identity should be about being an American. Apply that same concept here. You're no longer what? You're no longer from Sicily. You're no longer Sicilian. You're no longer Tuscan. You're no longer Piedmontese or Sardinian. You're Italian. Italian, right? They all speak Italian. Eat the same food, speak the same language. Shift gears real quick to Germany. You guys familiar with Poland ball memes? Anyone know? It's really just a bunch of balls that are shaped, that are colored with the flags, their national flags. It's just a way to represent. Anyway, never mind. Don't worry about it. But this is a picture, ideally, of what what Europe looked like 1805. As you can see, it's just a bunch of different little Poland balls here. They all represent the little states within the German Confederation. I mean, really, the Holy Roman Empire that came before, right? And it's a funny little organization because this Holy Roman Empire is neither holy, neither is it Roman, or is it really an empire. It's just a loose collection of German states. Two of the most powerful states in there is Austria and Prussia. In the post-Napoleonic era, they get reorganized into what we know as the German Confederation. 39 states, and again, those same two states are on top, Austria and Prussia. Yeah, Poland balls. You should look it up. It's hilarious. Thanks, Napoleon. During the German occupation, Germans didn't really like the French being there. Didn't like having French people running their affairs. Right? I don't think anybody would. It's kind of relatable, right? So there came the idea that they have to unify. There's this sentiment that had been seeded in generations before this, before Napoleon, but now is finally gaining real momentum, gaining real steam. We should unify. We should build a Germany, a unified Germany. But the question is, who gets to be all part of it? Who gets to be on top of it? Will it be Austria or will it be Prussia? Big Germany to include Austria, or a small Germany that excludes Austria? And it might be a good idea to have, where is it? Oh, there it is. Might be a good idea to have Austria in there. Lots of German-speaking people there, but also you have a whole empire backing you at this point. A lot of resources, a lot of manpower, right? But if you do have them sign on, they're also taking on those problems of manpower, that ethnic divisions, all those ethnic divisions that exist within Austria-Hungary are going to be a German problem. Because Austria-Hungary is so diverse. They have Greeks in their empire. They have Magyars or Hungarians, right? Serbians, Czechs, Slavs, a lot of different types of populations, lots of different languages, lots of different territories. And so that could be a problem. Oh, no. Work, thanks. You can't talk about German unification without talking about Otto von Bismarck. Legend. If you guys recall the reading that we had about him, the very first line, the very first quote out of him was that you can only unify Germany through blood and iron. It's awesome. So that goes to show you, like, his whole political, his whole viewpoint. Only through war. The liberal and peaceful ideals of a generation ago is just not going to work out in this Europe, right? Especially for Germany's sake. That said, yeah, those 1848 revolutions, they were trying to effect some kind of unification through a national assembly. Again, that national assembly was weak. It was unable to really pass anything of effect, right? And that was impetus enough for Bismarck, because he started to realize that, hey, yeah, these liberal ideals aren't going to pan out for us. We have to do something else. So he ends up as the prime minister of Prussia under Wilhelm Frederick. Yeah. Launches the Danish War. It's really a war of succession in Denmark. But Austria and Prussia step in to really seize these counties of Lauenburg, Holstein, and Schleswig. Probably butchering the pronunciation there, but it's okay. It goes great. Austria and Prussia are sharing ownership of those counties, but in 1866, just a couple years later, Prussia wants all of it now, all of it for themselves. They easily defeat the Austrians. They have an advanced, professional, industrial military compared to the Austrians, who are lagging slightly behind. Right? So a smaller Prussia is able to defeat a larger, arguably more powerful, richer Austria, but because of that technical advantage, that military advantage. And because of their victory, they're able to unite all of these other states, these smaller states in the north of Germany, or northern Germany. They're able to form that North German Confederation as a result, which is helpful because only a few more years later, they're going to declare war on France. And Bismarck does this through manipulating the Ems telegram. You might have heard of that in, AP World or AP European History, but basically the Ems telegram is this manipulated message that's released, a diplomatic message that's released to French and German media at the time, where it portrays this interaction between the Prussian king and a French diplomat as a very confrontational, very offensive to both French and German sentiments. Right? The actual meeting was actually kind of normal, doesn't really spark any interest, but the way that Bismarck manipulated the messaging put spin onto this news cycle, right, so to speak, in modern terms, Made it such that Germans were pissed off, made it such that French were pissed off, so much so that they're ready to go to war over it, over just this one diplomatic faux pas, so to speak. Right? Unfortunately, yeah, France does go ahead and declare war. They try to march over to defeat the Prussians, but they get routed instead. Napoleon III is captured. The entire French army is basically captured and dissolved, leaving the way open for the Third Republic of France to be established. And they stick around for a while, much longer than the others, really, which is good. But at the same time, this just means that Prussia is now just now won over all of these other Austrian holdouts. They realize that Prussia is the ascendant German power, and they want to sign on. They want to be part of it. 1871, they declare the German Empire in the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. If that's not adding insult to injury for the French, I don't know what else is. Like, we just routed your army, we captured your leader, and now we're declaring this empire that overshadows yours in your own backyard. What are you going to do? Right? Big sad. But at the same time, this is all this masterclass in realpolitik. Right? Bismarck is the key player in the late 19th century because he's able to piece together all these different German states into one powerful political entity. Right? That rapid transformation is driven from the top, just like in Japan, right, which is kind of helpful. But all of that just ends up tossing that balance of power out the window. This agreement that had kept Europe mostly peaceful, generally peaceful, for a few generations is now shattered entirely. Right? You now have Germany, which is, in modern terms, like a superpower. It is an absolute superpower in comparison to Britain, to France, to Russia, Austria, Hungary. Right? It's on par with them. But then also Italy. Italy's a regional player. It's a big player, but not on the same scale as Germany is. But it's important, right? And because that balance of power is now thrown out the window, all of these political leaders, all of these institutions have to play this whole new game to balance things out and to keep others in check. Italy and Germany just changed up the game entirely. Right? You had a few identified, clearly marked players before, but you add two more, and then now it's a whole different game. Right? This also demonstrates that nation building is not unique to non-white people, to non-Europeans. Right? It's not just Latin Americans. It's not just Northern Americans. It's not just Asians and Japanese or Chinese, whomever. We'll talk about China and Asia on Wednesday. But Europeans themselves, within the continent, can experience nationalism and build nations out of all these long-established states. Right? And that's going to be pretty tragic for these guys, because now that all those ethnicities, all those different peoples within Austria-Hungary are seeing that this is possible, that, hey, even within Europe, we can do this, that's inviting change in just a couple generations, not even a couple generations. We're going to see that all pan out. And it's one of the other causes for World War I. Bismarck, however, pretty interesting guy because he is the poster child for realpolitik. Right? This guy doesn't care where he falls on the political compass. I mean, it wasn't really even built until well after, but it doesn't matter. Point is, are you familiar with what the political compass is? I see one nod, a maybe. It's essentially an XY axis, right? Along your Y axis, you have an authoritarian leaning towards government versus a libertarian. Oh, you can't see it, damn. All right, versus libertarian on the bottom, right? So lots of emphasis on the individual, emphasis on centralized rule, and in this Y-axis, no, that's X-axis, yeah, is your economic outlook. Are you economically conservative or on the right? Are you economically liberal or on the left? And you just plot, based on a bunch of other questions in this test, you're able to plot where you generally fall on this compass. And you can find these tests online, right? But Bismarck doesn't care the point of the meme is that Bismarck does not care where he falls. Because the driving motivator for him is, I'm doing it for the state. I'm doing it for Germany. Right? Ideology does not matter. It's the goal. It's the objective that counts. Right? He's serving a conservative government, and during his earlier years, or at least some of his earlier years, he's committed to liberal reforms. As he progresses through his career, we call it now flip-flopping, but for him it's just really what's best for the state. What's best for the king? What's best for the emperor? Right? What will serve our interests best? And that's why he falls everywhere. And all these different policies that he implemented during his lifetime or during his career. So the political spectrum didn't really pan out that well for him, or it didn't really matter for him. Realpolitik. That's the bottom line of what realpolitik is. And he demonstrates that in spades.